Hello and welcome to another Celtic Way Sitdown with me, Tony Haggerty, and Sean Martin. And on today's programme is another very special guest who we are just totally excited about. This guy was a former Australian professional footballer. He played as a goalkeeper and he's now carving a living as a respectable sports pundit. I give you the one and only Mark Bosnich. Now, Mark played in England for Premier League clubs Aston Villa, Manchester United, and Chelsea. He won the English League Cup with Aston Villa in 94 and 96. He won the Premier League with Manchester United in 2000. He also played in Australia for Sydney United, Central Coast Mariners, and Sydney Olympic. And as well as representing Australia 17 times during career, he was a FIFA Confederations Cup runner-up in 1997. And he also, Sean, has the distinction of scoring a goal for the Socceroos when he netted a late penalty in a 13-0 win over the Solomon Islands in June 1997. So what can we say? We welcome Mark onto the Celtic Way Sit-Down. Thanks for joining us, sir. And we're going to talk about Ange Postecoglou's Celtic and all things from a fellow Australian's perspective. How are you, sir? Thank you for joining us.
Very, very good, Tony. Thank you for that introduction, and hello to you too, Sean, and hello to all the Celtic supporters and other supporters of other clubs who are watching here tonight. And that was a lovely introduction. You just missed one thing. I won the what's called now the World Club Championship, the Intercontinental title. It was called all the way back then against Palmeiras as well. So that was the first British club. I'm saying that because you guys were the first club to ever enter that competition way back in 1968.
You did. That's right. You won the Intercontinental. That's right. Yeah. Well done. Sorry. How could I miss that out, Mark? That's very remiss. World Club champion.
I think you missed it on purpose because Manchester United were the first British team to win it.
I just wanted to get you talk about it. You know what I mean, Mark? So there you go. Now, the first question I was going to ask you, Mark, is when Ange Postecoglou was appointed Celtic manager initially, you said it was a big risk, but you also said it would be a success. Yes. The risk was worth it, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I've known Ange for a long, long time, really quite closely since 2008, where I worked together with him on the box for probably about, I would say, 3 to 4 years, good years, and was fortunate to spend a lot of time with him. I remember him as a player, and I also remember him as a young manager for Australia. And funny enough, talking about the Intercontinental Cup that used to be, and then it obviously morphed into the World Club Championship. He was actually the manager of South Melbourne when the first World Club Championship was played in Brazil way back in 2000, not like at the end of 1999, 2000. And South Melbourne are actually in our group, Manchester United's group. So I remember him from then as well. And look, when I said it was a risk, every appointment, just like every transfer, is a risk as well. But as I said, I believe that he would be a success because of what I knew about him intimately from working alongside him, but also from watching his teams play from that moment on. And when I mean those teams, specifically Brisbane Roar here in Australia, where he really transcended the game to a different level in the way that he played. No one had ever played that type of style here in Australia before. And it was a real pleasure just actually going to watch their games every week. And then on to briefly with Melbourne Victory and, of course, the Australian national team. And then with Yokohama in Japan. And as you're finding out with these Japanese players that are coming over and doing so well, the Japanese league is by far the best league in Asia. And they are producing players left, right, and centre. And for him to achieve that in his second season to win the title was a fantastic achievement. And I knew Celtic had had a glorious time, but had lost their way that season before.
Yeah.
And I just knew two things from my time, from all my time in Britain, that number one, the Celtic fans appreciate good football as much as any fans in the whole world. And also I thought that the pressure that he would be under and the fact that nobody really, with the exception of a few of us, and I think that was more through ignorance more than anything, but no one really expected him to sort of hit the ground running so well, would go in his favor. So he could stay underneath the radar a little bit at the beginning. And even at the beginning, it was a little bit shaky. I think it was that game before one of those international breaks. I think they got a last-minute goal. I think it was against Aberdeen. I can't remember exactly which team it was. You need that little bit of luck. And the only thing I said was that he normally takes a little bit of time to start well, but I said in Scotland, he won't have that time. And he basically, he took that, in his stride. And And I think we saw the result of that with the success that he had winning a cup and then obviously winning a league. And also the most important thing, I think, and I especially think that for Celtic fans, and I think one of the real turning points was that game against Rangers at Celtic Park around Christmas time, where, even over, you could just feel it, you could sense it in the crowd, the way that he plays football. It really is an attractive way of playing football. A lot of people, I think, in the past, and including myself sometimes when I used to then commentate on these teams, sort of would love that football being married with winning football. Everyone wants to win, but there's only one team that can win. And I always believe that, if you can't win, the least you can do for the people that come and watch is to entertain them. And that's one thing you can never accuse Ange's teams of not doing, which is entertaining the crowd.
Mark, when Ange joined Celtic, I read somewhere that you likened his arrival to that of Arsene Wenger at Arsenal in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Is that the type of fundamental impact you can see him having on the game here, the way maybe Wenger influenced things down south? Because he seems to be having an impact more than just at Celtic.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point, Sean. And the reason as well, there's another reason why I said that as well. I always remember when Arsene Wenger first came to Arsenal, and I think it was the back page of one of the dailies. I don't know which one it was. It was saying like Arsene who, and he'd come from Japan as well. The people who appointed him at the time knew exactly what he could do. And I think the same goes here now with Celtic. And I think we're seeing that. It's understandable, especially when you play in Europe, you kind of focus. I mean, Europe is the mecca of football. There's no doubt about that. And you kind of focus sort of what's going on around. But the thing is, the reality is football is rising everywhere around the world, which is good for the game. And we're seeing that as well. The results of that, the fact is that, from not this World Cup, but from the next World Cup onwards, we're going to have 48 teams. And that's a testament to how it's rising. And like I said to you before, in terms of Japan, it's an excellent league and they're producing excellent players. But this hasn't been an overnight thing. And for him to go and do what he did, not a lot of people in Britain or in Europe, for that matter, would have known, about Yokohama Marinos and what they did that season. But we did, obviously, here. And I do believe, like I said at the time, and I think so far he has done that. I'm always wary, you don't want to hex people and all that, but that he would help, again, leave his mark in terms of the style of football that can be played. A lot of people, and still in the game, a lot of respected people still, have always sort of traditionally sort of set limits. Where Ange is the type of person, and I know this because it takes one to know one, who doesn't set limits, who looks at as limits as plateaus, and then you reach one plateau and you go on to the next one. And he would have relished that, like I said, not only the challenge of bringing glory back to Celtic Football Club, but also the fact of, like I said, playing in a style that people will go, wow, this is something really special. And why can't we imitate that as well? And overall, that's good for the game. That's good for the game anywhere that you have teams playing really attractive football. Because as I say to a lot of young aspiring managers, I actually think it's more of a risk, even though you don't think it is at the time, but it's actually more of a risk to play really ultra defensive football, because eventually you're going to concede. And if you can't score on the other end, the game is about scoring goals, and scoring goals brings joy to all the fans. And that's what Ange's game is based on. And that's why we've enjoyed watching these teams play for so long.
Do you think now, Mark, that because he's blazed a trail for Australian coaches, do you think he has, that they'll now be more accepted in European football management roles? You said Europe's the mecca for football managers. Do you think that he might open the floodgates for other guys to get that recognition as well now?
Yeah, Tony, that's a very good point. I really do believe that. Look, and that's understandable as well. There is a little bit of an inferiority complex when it comes to coaches that are coming from, not so much South America, it must be said, but so say places like America, Australia, other parts of the globe. But slowly but surely those barriers have been breaking. I know Bob Bradley, when he had the tough time, I think it was at Swansea not so long ago, and a lot of people were sort of jumping off the back of that. But you got Jesse Marsh now doing really, really well at Leeds, and Ange Postecoglou is really blazing a trail. And I think what it does is, like I said, it sort of really emphasizes the fact that football is becoming more and more a global game, not just South America and Europe, and that can only be good for the sport. And it's important, I think, that for so long, Australian players had players to look up to. Like a player when I was growing up here in Australia that we all looked up to was Craig Johnson and what he achieved at Liverpool. And it's important for young Australian coaches to have somebody that has been successful. Even at the time when he got appointed as Celtic manager, I was like, that would be a bonus, but it is great. That's why it's a really good point that you raised, Tony, because people will now turn around just like they do with players who come from all around the world and say, well, if he can do it, what about the other ones, you know? But it must be said, there's a little caveat to that with Ange. Ange is by far our finest manager here in Australia. So there's no doubt about that. So you are getting the best. And the fact that he's done it, yes, blazes a trail, but the ones around at the moment are not in Ange's league.
Going back to what you says about Australian football, you mentioned that he essentially revolutionised the way football's played in Australia. What kind of thing were you meaning by that? What kind of impact?
Well, for so long, it's kind of like Sean, like I said to you before. For so long, there was always divided opinion, in terms of the fact that you can't play in this overwhelming attacking style and expect to win trophies, specifically the league. We decide things here through a playoff system at the end of the season, but it still holds dear for many people, including myself. The team over the whole season, home and away, who's the number one team, are the number one team. That's just probably because I spent all my playing career in Europe, and I always recognize that being the greatest test. And that the playoffs at the end of the year, although whoever wins the grand final here, they know them as champions. For me, it's like sort of winning a cup really at the end of the season between the top 6 teams. So he broke down those barriers, and there was a lot of players that he had at his time, especially at Brisbane Roar, who in the past not all of us, but the majority sort of thought, well, they're good players, but there's no way they could play the type of football that Ange wanted to, and he got them playing that. And I think that's becoming more and more of an important part of modern day management, is the fact that are you a good manager? But what defines being a good manager? Well, one of the points I think that's perhaps been overlooked is the fact that you can still improve regardless of what your age is. And there's no doubt that Ange improved players wherever he went. And he basically gave him a belief to say that you can play this type of football, because it's not an easy type of football to play. It takes great energy, it takes great concentration and great ability. But he's shown with the teams that he's had that they can do that. And of course, just like with trends, without anything else, when a team wins a World Cup playing a certain style, we all go, oh wow, maybe teams go and copy that, and that's been the byproduct. The good byproduct is that teams not all of them, but that's okay, because variety is the spice of life. The majority of teams, like Pep Guardiola's Barcelona, have said, look, listen, let's try to play this style, because yes, there is only one team that can win, but if we can play in this entertaining style, it's actually better for the manager as well, because you might be going to a game week in, week out and say, okay, well, we didn't get there, of course we want to win, and that's everything, no doubt. But I'll tell you what, we entertained our fans for that whole season. But if you can marry the both together, then you got the perfect recipe.
You've mentioned it already. You were a pundit alongside Ange on Fox Sports, I think it was, in Australia.
That's right. Yeah, that's
for a few years. How did you find that?
Oh, really good. I mean, like I said to you, I obviously knew of him. I met him briefly back in Brazil back in 2000, and it was great. I mean, he obviously listened to a lot of things that I was saying, but I picked up a lot more of him than perhaps I let on as well. And I used to always say to him, and to be fair, he talked the talk, but he walked the walk, because he would say things, especially off air, and I would turn around to him, because he's older than me, so I always got a natural respect for people that are a little bit older than me. And I used to say to him, all right, well, don't tell me. You got to show me now when you're a manager. And to be fair, he did. And he got to know him. He's a very good man. There's no doubt about that. Even though he supported Liverpool, okay, you can't have everything. But he was a very good man. But he knew his football backwards and the history of football backwards. And he also, which he didn't talk about much, but he actually mentioned a few times to me, he had that wonderful experience, which I always think is a massive bonus, regardless of who the legend is, so to speak, of playing under the late great Ferenc Puskas when he was a player at South Melbourne Football Club. And he used to always mention little stories about him as well. And I think that had a lot more effect on him perhaps than he even made out. He picked up a lot from him. But, the bottom line is, he would have picked up a lot from everywhere, but he developed here in Australia, which makes a vast majority of Australian supporters very, very proud. But it's also a testament to him as well, that he's always open to new ways. But for me, sitting next to him, like I said, when he went off to manage Brisbane Roar, it was a great miss for us because I thought he was great on television. And for me personally as well, because I really enjoyed the chats that I had with him. I took out more out of those chats, like I said, than I let on. But I really got to know him well. Not only, like I said, a good man, but he knows football backwards. And he was adamant. And that was way back then. That was 2010, 2011, something like that, over 10 years ago, that he would implement the type of things that he used to tell me about. Because at that time, the Socceroos, who we'd commentate on quite regular, they were coming to the end of that 2006 generation, which done so well at the World Cup. And a lot of their games that they were playing, the World Cup qualifiers, were affairs that, put it this way, they wouldn't really raise the dial of excitement, put it that way. And I would challenge, I would say to him, well, what would you do, Ange? I'd say to him, what would you tell me? I'd say, what would you do? And he'd say, oh, do this, do that. And I used to say, all right, don't tell me, show me. Well, by the way, he's shown me. There's no doubt about that. And as we approach what I think will be, one of the highlights of his career, the beginning of the Champions League, he's done it. To be fair to him, he's done it. He's got there. And now, knowing him like I knew him, and do know him, I think I know him from that part as well as one can know someone. He'll be relishing this challenge, and he'll want this to be a season in, season out thing, not only for himself but for Celtic Football Club.
He's spoken a lot.
Tony, you got to say you've got the Puskas, Puskas.
Yeah, he's spoken a lot about Ferenc Puskas, and I asked him about Ferenc Puskas as well, and he's also spoken a lot about the buy-in that he needed people to get to believe in that philosophy and style of football. But that Ferenc Puskas influence never left him, as you said, and it is, it's something that kind of strikes a chord with me, Mark, that when you learn from someone like that, you just don't forget it, do you? And it's made a lasting impression on him and the way he wants to play football, because he always said that Puskas said he played with 2 wingers and 3 up front, no other way, and he just won't deviate from it. But he said when he came, a lot of his time was spent trying to get people to buy into that, and when they do, it reaps rewards, basically.
Well, you've seen the results firsthand. I mean, you saw it, like I said, you saw it last season. And like I said, we all had the benefit of seeing it before.
Yeah.
And yes, and like I said many a time, the Japanese league may be the best league in Asia, but it's not the Scottish Premier League. And I didn't mean that to be disrespectful to the Japanese league. Maybe one day it will be, but at this moment in time, it's not. So there'll be different tests and a different style of playing, and people will try to stop him in certain types of ways. And I mentioned this before he come, but you're right about the fact, like I said, it has an effect. I mean, I was very, very lucky throughout my career. I came across so many people, that you could, take little bits from. People have been part of the great Liverpool teams, like people like Ray Houghton and people like, you say Paul McGrath, who'd had great experience, with Republic of Ireland. I mean, the list goes on, but he had that. It's very rare that they get that over here with one of the true greats of world football. Full stop. And like I said, he never used to mention it much over here. So it heartens me to hear when you're saying he mentioned it a lot, because it would have made a lasting effect. But
I asked him a lot about it, Mark.
Yeah,
I'm really interested in it. I think it's
100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, I'm a football historian as well, so obviously, that's a major part. But the one thing that always impressed me and reminded me a lot, because when I was a young kid, and I believe in those between 16 and 20 are your formative years, probably in life as well, but especially in football. And I was very fortunate between that age to be playing under Sir Alex Ferguson at Manchester United, and he was always determined, to say we're going to play the right way. And he used to always, even when we were young kids, if we weren't performing too well, he would come down to the dressing room and said, not only do you have to win at this club, but you have to play a certain style of football that's entertaining to the fans. And I believe Celtic is also steeped in that tradition. I think it was, like I said, it was something that it was down to Ange to get the boys to believe in it, but he's done it before. and you saw the results of once he's done that. So let's just hope that not only that does it continue, but it evolves as well. And I also think, and because the one sort of argument I used to always say to him, look, well, there will come a time when you have to adjust little things, and and he said, yeah, but not my philosophy. I said, yeah, I'm not saying to adjust your philosophy. Your philosophy is your philosophy, but there may be times when, from a tactical perspective, just say, for example, let's just say you're coaching a big team in Europe, whatever, you got a few of your best players out injured, and I used to say, maybe you're going to have to do this and do that. He goes, no, regardless if I'm injured, or I still want to play my way. I was just like, all right, well, we'll see. But he's done it. He's done it. So good. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the Real Betis game last year, Tony, when it was
you lose 4-3. And I remember during that, the campaign in Europe originally, they were copping goals left, right, and centre. And I thought to myself, I was thinking to myself, I wonder if he's on the same wavelength now, thinking he may. But you know what? Like I said to you, fair play to him.
Oh, yeah.
And that will be, he'll look at that. From my experience with him, is he'll look at that and again they say, okay, as long as we learn, and that's where I think this is where you have to give a lot of credit to the board and also to the fans for having that patience and that belief as well. They've got to buy into it as well, and I think that they did. But he knew if he was given time, like we all did over here, if he was given time, that he would eventually get it right. He just got it right far, far quicker than I think a lot of people thought he would.
That's what I was going to ask, Mark. When you say you debated with him about like process over result and stuff, were you surprised at how quickly he got both the process and the results under his belt in Scotland?
Yeah, a little bit, because like I said, there was a bit of a shaky start. We talked about the some of the Europa results just briefly and all that. So I thought, well, maybe he may adjust certain things. But like I said, when I was watching them week in, week out, I could see. So if I could see the improvement, he definitely would have seen it because he's with them day in, day out. And like I said, when they beat Rangers around Christmas time at Celtic Park, and that's when I could feel the tingles down my back when they scored one of those goals, and I was like, he's got it here. He's really got it. There were still little jolts, you could say. The Bodo Glint result would have been a bit of a surprise. But we subsequently we found out Bodo Glint wasn't so bad after all, right? I mean, they didn't only beat Celtic. They in the group stage they beat Roma as well and pushed them really hard as well in the knockout stages of the Conference League. So there'll be little things, but that's what he spoke about. We had him on our show on Stan Sports last week to preview obviously the Champions League coming up. And I asked him the question, about, every preseason, obviously there's an emphasis on fitness, no doubt. That's for every team around the world. But usually, the manager will sort of also have through his coaches a little bit of a emphasis on evolving, so to speak. He put the word evolve, and I was saying maybe a little bit of a different little tweak to the way they play. But I wasn't surprised that he kept the same philosophy because of all those debates that we used to have, especially off air. But like I said, for me, and I used to say to him, look, the bonus for the fan, from a fan's perspective, I always, I used to love going to watch these teams play. I used to look for his team first to see where they would play. But because I liked him as a person and as a man, I said, I want you to see you do well as well. But he's done that wherever he's gone, to be fair. And he stuck to his principles. But like I said, I do believe that he's a lot smarter sometimes than he makes out as well. And he does make those little adjustments when he has to.
I'm just going to say that you were talking about the Champions League, Mark. How special do you think it is for Ange that first ever game that he manages a club in the Champions League, it's against Real Madrid, and the Ferenc Puskas backstory and all that kind of link? I mean, it's just a dream for him, really, isn't it?
100%. I mean, I've always got a saying about the football gods, but I truly believe in them because these things come up all the time. You have a look at little situations and, so-and-so used to be there, even as for players, he used to be there as a kid or, so-and-so. But with the Ferenc Puskas thing, the fact that they're playing Real Madrid with Celtic in the Champions League at home as well, where we know on those European nights, I mean, the fans are special anyway. On those European nights, they hit a different level. It really is something that we would dream about here as kids. Here in Australia growing up, as we do now, usually the first portion of the Champions League games are on very early in the morning. When it goes to daylight savings, a little bit later. That's towards the end of the season in Europe and going into our winter months. But it's something that we used to always dream about. I mentioned at the start the Intercontinental Trophy, the World Club Championship. They used to be, as you remember, played in Tokyo back in the day. That was a good time for us. That used to be around midday on a Sunday or something like that. But the European games, the true believers over here, we get up for them religiously and watch them at 4 a.m. Like I said before, I went to daylight, and they go back to about 5 or 6 in the morning. And he would have been one of those. There's no doubt about that. He hails from Melbourne, which is the second biggest city in Australia behind Sydney. Everyone would have been, like I said, on that ilk, like Ange, myself, and that would have been steeped in that tradition. And it really is the true test of for me of a club side, the best club competitions in the world. And for him to have that opportunity and then to go to the Bernabeu, obviously, for the second game would be an absolute a dream come true, you have to say.
Because his father was a Real Madrid fan and said he was a Liverpool fan growing up, and his father was a Real Madrid fan. So
correct. Correct.
Two influences in his life was Ferenc Puskas and his father, obviously, So I think he'll have a moment, won't he? In the Bernabeu.
Oh, he will. He definitely will. And I do know how close he was to his father. And unfortunately, for those who don't know, he's passed away. And I always remember ringing him just to pass on my commiserations. It was some years ago now, and I remember him saying, "I don't make them like that anymore." And I guess that goes true for a lot of our, a lot of our parents and so forth. But he definitely played a massive part. There was a massive story they did on Ange here on one of the channels here. And you could just see by the story and what occurred, how much an influence his father had on his career. And he'll be looking down from heaven come Tuesday night and be very, very proud of his son and where he is. And knowing Ange, like I said, one thing's being there. The next thing he'll want to do is actually to make his mark. So that's one thing we all got to look forward to. And from a football perspective as well, take away the Ange story and what we're talking about. I mean, it's reigning European champions up against the Scottish champions. But I'm really looking forward to the game. It'll be a massive test for both sides, really.
The follow-on question is: can he be successful in the Champions League, Mark?
Well, I really think they've got a chance. I mean, and I don't want to hex. I'm always very careful with Ange because I said I like him. I really, really like him, and like I said, I was close to him. From that perspective, I really want him to succeed. But so I'm always very careful of what I say. I kind of think like sort of I'm part of the staff type of thing, and so I don't want to hex him. But just take that away, and I'll step outside and step into my pundit thing. If you're looking at it, and I know teams from Pot 4 have had very little success, over some time qualifying. I think it's something like, I don't know, I think it's only about 2 teams from, I don't know, something like the last 35 that have qualified from Pot 4. But looking at that group, if you're saying, okay, whatever, Real Madrid is Real Madrid, the reigning European champions, so they'll be one of the favourites to go through. Shakhtar Donetsk won't be easy because a lot of their players will be playing for other reasons. And we saw that obviously with Scotland with the World Cup qualifiers as well. Yeah. But they still are going to be playing their home games in a different country, so it won't be easy for them. And RB Leipzig, look, we know them very well from last season. They obviously got to the semi-finals of the Europa League against Rangers. Rangers beat them. And they are beatable. They haven't exactly set the world on fire on their start to the Bundesliga season. So I think they've got an opportunity, a real opportunity here to get into the knockout stages. And when you get into the knockout stages, I don't care who it is, you've always got an opportunity. I think sometimes people sort of think, oh, it's impossible. Yeah, but when it happens, then it's only impossible until something happens. Yeah. And there's one thing for certain, they won't lack belief because of the way, number one, that they've started and because of who their manager is. And also, they'll have somebody who's a Champions League winner there on the bench, and Harry Kewell as well. And that adds a lot of weight when you got somebody around who can actually say to you, this and that and the other, and you think, well, hang on a minute, he has won a Champions League, so he does know what he's talking about.
And knowing Ange the way you do, Mark, the more impossible, the better. That's the challenge he realises, isn't it? You tell him something's impossible, he's like, no, it's not.
Yeah, of course. And like I said, it would have been. So I said, because we talked about the Puskas scenario, Real Madrid, arguably the greatest club in the world in terms of most times that they've won the Champions League more than anyone. And like I said, it won't be just enough for him just to be there. He'll want to leave his mark, and there's no better way to leave. You've got nothing to lose, Celtic, when they play Real Madrid. Absolutely nothing. There's not a lot of people who are expecting them to win or to do well against Real Madrid. And that's why obviously those next two games that they have and the return ones against Leipzig and Shakhtar Donetsk, they're going to decide who's going to finish second and who's going to finish third. But for me, the Real Madrid games will take care of themselves. And like I said, they've got absolutely nothing to lose. And, anyone who's got nothing to lose can be dangerous opponents.
I like that, Tony. I can see you like it as well.
I'm like that.
Mark, we've spent obviously about half an hour talking about Ange Postecoglou, but you yourself had a great career as well. And I wanted to ask about your own relationship with Celtic, because it's, as far as I understand it, you almost joined the club when Martin O'Neill was manager, and just wondering why did that not come to pass? Why did that move not happen?
I did, but all right, if I tell you this, don't jump down the thing at me, right? Okay, and this goes to all the supporters as well, because I said to him, it's too cold up there, all right? I just said it's too cold for me, simple as that, right? I look at the time. Look, I had that season at Manchester United. I'd fallen out with Sir Alex, and I had it in my mind that this, I didn't, so far as I was concerned, we won 2 trophies that year. Like I said to you, the Premier League by a record points total was only broken about a couple of seasons ago by Manchester City, and the World Club Championship. And I was like, well, so far as I was concerned, and I knew sort of what it was about. I was like, well, I'm going to stay here. I've done nothing wrong, so to speak. And I went to dinner with Martin O'Neill and my agent at the time, and we had a great dinner in London. He's a lovely man, Martin O'Neill. Got a load of respect for him. Double European Cup winner himself. So much experience. And I was like, I felt, in one way, I felt really, really bad, because I kind of deep down knew I wasn't going to come. And I didn't want to be seen for him to think that I was wasting time. I wasn't. It was a great pleasure to meet him, just to talk to him and all that. But that was really it. I was kind of like, I'm going to stay and fight for my place, because, like I said, I didn't really see as though, that I did anything wrong. And then I remember seeing Neil Lennon, and I'm trying to think who it was. It was Neil Lennon and somebody else later on at a nightclub. I think it was the same night. And I was like, did Martin O'Neill send you down here to convince me? And I was going, no, but I was going, why? And I remember saying to them, I said, listen, it's too cold for me. I remember I come from Australia. I go, Manchester's as far north as I'm going to go. Yeah. So that was pretty much it. But subsequently, with the success they had, I probably should have come. I should have come at least on loan, put it that way. It would have been a great experience, and I would have had that under my belt as well. When you talked about at the start of playing in an Old Firm derby, which after I went to watch one when I was a young kid at Manchester United, I was like, wow, this is one of the most phenomenal atmospheres I've witnessed in any sport anywhere in the world.
They won the treble that year, of course. The season that you.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. All right, and there's another thing as well. Now remember, this is another thing as well. In the mid-90s, my ex-assistant manager when I was a young kid at Man United, Archie Knox, was with the late Walter Smith at Rangers, and they'd asked me to come as well. So I sort of thought, well, if I say no to them and then I say yes to Celtic, that's it forever. He's never going to speak to me ever again as well. I told them the same thing. I said, it's too cold.
Is it true you bought Martin O'Neill a bottle of champagne when they won the treble? Was that true?
I sent one to him. Yeah, I sent one to him. Hopefully he got it, just to congratulate him. But he, like I said, he was such a fabulous man. And you talk about, when you talked about Ange with Ferenc Puskas, and I said I was so privileged to sort of, come across the likes of Martin O'Neill, and I could have listened to him the whole night, especially talking about the late Brian Clough. It was amazing, and that achievement by Nottingham Forest, which really at the time you could say was a bit of and I don't mean it disrespectful, but a provincial club to win 2 European Cups on the trot was an absolutely phenomenal achievement, and arguably it will never be repeated again. So just to listen to some of the stories about him and John Robinson, Peter Shilton, people that I used to really look up to as a kid was absolutely phenomenal.
I think it's true that you say that the football's full of sliding doors moments, isn't it, Mark?
It is. There's no doubt about that.
No
doubt about that. One door closes, another one opens, and I think it depends a lot from my experience looking back. It depends as well as your state of mind. So maybe if I had another 3 months at that time to sort of think about it, sort of thought, okay, there's no way back here, then probably yeah. But at that time was the start of the season, and I was like, in the end, I was like, no, I want to stay and fight for my place, and see what happens, But understandably so, Martin O'Neill had no time to waste, and he had Celtic Football Club's best interests at heart. And like you said, in the end, he was proved right. They won the treble.
And the irony about all of this, Mark, is that had Celtic won 10 in a row, they might not have came for Ange, and all this wouldn't have happened. You know,
Well,
so
that's enough. 100%, Tony. Yeah, but listen, I'm talking about the football gods when we talked about, you know, he draws Real Madrid, you know, with the Puskas thing and all that, you know what? And Zach are the same thing. You know, you look back, you know, but that's football, isn't it? You know, you think about football, you know, you think about, you know, even during the 90 minutes, you know, you think about, well, if so and so had put them 3-0 up, this comeback would never happen, or if this happened, or if that one, you know, that's football, and that's I think one of the intriguing parts why we all love it so much. Because there's so many little things that can have if that, and it's coming back to what you said, Tony, about sliding door moments. It's really about taking your opportunities when you can, and sometimes, you know, you think you may be winning, but you may have lost, or you think you may be losing, but you actually may have won. And I agree with that. It's like, you know, remember, you take yourself back 12 months and you think to yourself, you know, coming back to what Sean said at the start, how many people were like going, I remember Packy Bonner coming out and saying some real strong stuff, saying, oh, you know, this, that, and the other. And I remember thinking at the time, wow, like, you know, this is sort of like, you know, I can understand where they're coming from, but these people, you know, and I know Packy Bonner is a good man. He's a great servant for Celtic, but to come out and say that so strong, he did risk, and he's, you know, having a bit of egg on their face afterwards, you know. But that's football, and like you said as well, Tony, you know, if they went and won that title, I don't believe there would have been a change. It would have been silly to change, but they did. Yeah, and that's the way it is. And I think in the end, you know, well, put it this way, I know where I'd rather be.
Well, I think the majority of every Celtic supporter would rather be where they are now, Mark. That's a fact.
Yeah. Well, for this, I can just remember last season, because obviously the Premier League is massive over here in Australia. It always has been. The Scottish League has been big, but not as big as the Premier. I don't mean that disrespectfully, just from a supporter base, but I always remember then, obviously, when Ange signed, then everyone over here was the rights are held by beIN Sports. I remember started, you know, watching games and tweeting, and I remember getting, you know, Rangers and Celtic fans go, hang on a minute, we've never heard you tweet or say anything about Scottish football in 10 years. I said, well, Ange is there now. Yeah. They just raised the profile. Like, you know, everyone's looking forward to the derby this week. We really can't wait for it. Yeah.
Very much so. Listen, you've been absolutely terrific, Mark. That's been 37 minutes of gold. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll call timing it there, shall we, Sean? But thanks for your contribution.
Thank you so much, Tony. Thank you so much, Sean, and a massive all the best, and I wish you all the best to all the Celtic fans that are watching, and hopefully they'll come on again sometime, and maybe on the like before the knockout stages.
We'll definitely get you back on, man.
I'll be thinking about you. If we get to that match day 6, and I'm telling you, I'll be thinking about you. Don't worry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we know you're a busy man at the minute, but listen, thank you so much. Really
much appreciated.
Thanks for coming on the programme. Yeah, what a wonderful guest, Sean. You've got to agree with that, eh?
Yep, certainly was. Much appreciated, Mark.
Anytime, Sean. Anytime, Tony. Take care.